Welcome to Survivor Shift, moving from surviving to thriving. I'm Tammy Renee with BuildOnTheLight.com, and today my guest is Jody Quick. We first met each other through the PTSD support group here at Suicide Prevention Network in Minden, Nevada. Jody, I've been so impressed by the insights, your healing, and even the progress that you have made in this last year that I've known you. And I feel like what you have shared has really helped strengthen and I guess inform people on ways to move forward. So tell us about your journey by maybe starting with the trauma that caused that major life change.
I was living down in Southern California at the time. I was leaving work on my motorcycle going home. I split lanes to go into a safer pocket of traffic. A car, unfortunately, didn't see me. They came over and I rear-ended them. And I woke up in the hospital, not knowing what had happened, how I got there. I then spent the next 5.5 months in the hospital recovering, learning how to walk again, learning how to talk again, realizing that my right arm wasn't working, and I didn't know why.
Wow.
Then I came home February 2013, and my home was no longer my home. It wasn't very comfortable. My wife was very angry at me, and she was very cold and distant. And I find that her oldest daughter and her 2 large dogs had also moved into the house.
Oh, wow.
And I started looking around, and the house had been remodeled while I was in the hospital. With all new hardwood floors, brand new furniture, newer SUV in the driveway.
Interesting.
And I had a classic truck that I was working on prior to my accident. Well, turns out there was no money to redo that.
Wow.
Because all the insurance money I had gotten was all spent on the remodels of the house, the furniture, the car.
Oh, man.
And I was forced to sell that truck. Then my wife started blaming me for everything that had happened. Why I lost my job.
Oh, gosh.
Why I lost the use of my arm. Why I got in the accident. And all she could focus on was the fact that I was splitting lanes. Instead of me being alive, all she was focused on was while I was splitting lanes. And after being home 4 months, being told repeatedly, and I quote, "If you don't like it here, just go to Gardnerville," end quote. I finally walked out one day. Called my oldest sister who lived down in Southern California, and she came and picked me up. And I moved in there with her. And I started digging into my finances. Find I have no bank account, no money.
Oh, wow.
No job, no health insurance. And I'm in debt.
Oh, man.
So then I moved here to Gardnerville. And I became very, very depressed.
I can imagine.
And then August 17, 2022, after being very, very depressed and living with an addiction, I had a nervous breakdown and became suicidal.
Wow.
I jumped in my car and just started driving. And I was driving myself to behavioral health in Carson City. When along the way, there was a 18-wheeler, and I almost swerved into it just to try and kill myself.
Wow. So talk about the when you're feeling suicidal. You know, what's going on inside? Is it just in your head? Is it in your like kind of more of a soul difference, or what's happening inside you?
For me personally, it was in my head. Just telling me I can't take the pain anymore, just end it. And yet there was still a small part of me that didn't want to commit suicide.
Right.
So I found myself at behavioral health and checked myself in for 10 days. Then I came home where I live with my sister and brother-in-law, who are some of my biggest supporters.
Right.
And I happened to find a flyer for a bicycle scavenger hunt in town, sponsored by the Suicide Prevention Network here in Minden.
Right.
So me, my sister, and brother-in-law went, and after it was all over, I went and met two of the most incredible people that ran the Suicide Prevention Network and worked there that eventually changed my life.
Right. And that would be Debbie Posning, who's the director, and I'm sure you're talking about Jesse.
Yes.
Who is our liaison between the support council and our support group.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And there I met a PTSD support group. And I started going, and I met some of the most incredible people there that have helped me change my life, and you're one of them as well.
Well, we all help each other in that group. It's been amazing. And I remember when you first came to the group, you were a little bit reluctant to share. And you seemed like you weren't quite sure you wanted to be there. Did you still feel a hesitancy about how to move forward at that point? Or
yes, I didn't know how to move forward. And I was very hesitant to share my story and get out of my comfort zone.
Right.
But after hearing everybody's story there and seeing them, it became a little easier, and I finally let the walls down and shared my story.
So I want to talk about your survivor shift. That point where the anguish, the pain, the frustration, and everything that your trauma had caused was kind of outpowered by some kind of belief in the future, maybe. So what was the difference there? What kept you from, it seems like there's almost a difference right there when the thought came to you to pull in front of that 18-wheeler. So what happened? Like in that, what did you have to do to be able to go to behavioral health? And
for me, I to this day, I still don't know how I got there. I think I just went into autopilot. And one thing, I think the biggest thing that kept me was thinking about my son.
Right. So you had outside motivation.
Yeah. I kept thinking about Matthew and going, okay, what would life be like without him? And how would he do without me, having known that Dad committed suicide?
Right.
That got me there. And then just having time away from the addiction, all the outside stresses that I thought were there, it just gave me time to really think and look deep inside and finally turn around and face my fears and the past and face it head on and say, okay, enough concentrating on the past, enough focusing on the past.
Right.
It's time to turn around and say no, and I'm going to stay alive because I need to.
Right. And before you've shared with me about how, but you had to process the emotion of the past. And then another thing I love that you said before was about you had to let go of the pride. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I had to finally set my pride aside and recognize that, okay, one, because of my pride, that's why I ended up in the mental hospital, because I was too proud to talk about my issues and what I was feeling.
Right.
Because as a man, there's that whole cliche, we can't be weak, we can't show our emotions, we can't talk about things, we have to be strong.
Right.
And so when I finally did set that pride aside, the whole past and all the darkness I was living in, it all just fell away. And that little pinprick of light finally became bigger and bigger. And it's like, oh, okay.
I love that.
There is light outside this darkness I was living in.
To me, that was really eye-opening when you said that about it's setting aside our pride. I know in my own journey, I had to get to the point to admit I did not know what to do. I didn't know what to do with all the emotion. I didn't know what to do with the realities that were right in my face. I'm sure the reality of losing your arm, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's something you have to deal with. And so it is about being able to accept, I need help. And it's okay that I need help.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I finally admitted and realized it's okay that I need help, and that helped me to seek the help I needed. Instead of going, okay, I know I need help, and how do I get it? And no, you don't need help. You're tough. And
so after that day, so you chose to not run into the 18-wheeler, to not stay home and be in your dark pit. Are you happy with the choice that you ultimately made?
Yes.
To live?
Yes. I'm a lot happier. But I was stuck in my head on like a little hamster wheel going round and round and round. And every now and then I would step off and think, okay, I'm okay. And the next thing you know, I'm right on it again. Now, I finally stepped off the hamster wheel. And it's like, oh, okay, now I can co-create my life now.
Yes, I love that.
And I can live in the present rather than living and focusing on the past, on what I'd lost. And that helped me realize life is worth living. And you have to kind of look at the blessings that you have. Right.
I love that, becoming a co-creator in your life. I love beautiful insight, beautiful imagery that comes with that we are ultimately, we get to decide, what our life will look like. Yeah. Is it going to be exactly, I'm sure you would rather you didn't lose an arm, but I mean, so it's not exactly how you would picture a perfect life, but it's still a good life.
It is. It's a very good life. I'm very blessed.
What message would you have? You and I have talked about if we can, just help one person hang on and, look for better things and hope in better things, then it's all worth all of this that we do, right? So what's the message that you would have for those people who might be struggling, or even others that need the understanding?
Well, if you're in a dark place, mentally, physically, there's always that little pinprick of light. And if you just focus on that and one step in front of the other, you eventually will get there. And you'll see that light. That little light will become brighter and brighter, and the darkness will fade away. Because if anybody can come out of the darkness, yeah, I did. Anybody can.
Right.
And I think a lot of that to the Suicide Prevention Network and the work that they do.
Right. Actually, before we close, maybe you can say a little bit about specifically what did they do for you? If you can think of like maybe just a few specific things that they did or that they offer that helped you to be able to hang on.
They helped me realize, one, that I'm not alone in my depression, that there's other people suffering.
Right.
Two, that there's other people that thought about suicide, think about suicide. They gave me a support group for people that may not have necessarily had or thought of suicide, but have faced some type of trauma. And together there, I realized that I wasn't alone in my suffering. Even though our stories are different, when you're at the bottom, there's always somebody there that's hit rock bottom as well. And one thing I tell my sons, when you're at the bottom, there's only one way to go, and that's up.
Right.
And you just one foot in front of the other, and it'll get there.
Right. It's possible.
Yes.
It is possible to get out of that pit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right. Pride has to be set aside.
No, you have to set pride aside.
You have to set aside that. But also, I love that we're not alone.
No.
And I think I spent a lot of my life, behind this mask, thinking I was alone with all the brokenness, I guess you could say, in my brain. So I love that. And I love, too, the Suicide Prevention Network. They have so many different programs and different resources that they can guide you to. And it's not just about suicide, but it's about all learning life tools and gaining the things you need so you don't hopefully get to that point that you want to end it all. But even if you are to that point, they can help you find your way up.
Yes, they can.
Like you said, out of the pit.
Just set your pride aside and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Right.
I did.
Yep. And look at, and you have.
Here I am.
Yeah.
I don't have the mask anymore. I took that off and have a genuine smile now.
Right. Right. Oh, and you talked about, too, that your healing has helped you to be more outgoing.
Yes.
And then, and that being more outgoing, you had said, has that helped you, or how has that helped you in your mental health and your mental well-being?
It's helped me considerably, because I used to think that with me sharing my story, everybody would just get tired of it and go, okay, great. There's another pity party at one. And I'm finding that the more I share my story, the more I'm helping people that are suffering in one way or another. And that in turn has helped me with my mental health issues.
Isn't it amazing? It's like just when we think, oh, I'm going to go help somebody, and it turns out I think we're helped at least as much, if not more, than the person we think we're quote unquote helping, right? But I love that. I love the connection. I feel like that if we can be open with each other and allow a deeper connection. I mean, it's fun to connect with people on things we love, like hiking or, or music or whatever it is that we love, but having also kind of more of a soul-to-soul connection. It's amazing. It's amazing what we can overcome.
Yes, it is.
When we open ourselves to that.
It really is.
Thank you, Jody, so much for the inspirational messages. Appreciate that. I'm Tammy Renee with buildonthelight.com, and this has been Survivor Shift.